Welcome back to another episode of the Taiwanology podcast. This is your host, Liu Guangying from Taiwan. What if I told you the biggest foreign investment in U.S. history isn't coming from Europe, the Middle East, or even China, but from Taiwan? Earlier this month, TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, the world's most advanced semiconductor chipmaker, announced plans to invest at least $100 billion to expand its Arizona operations. The U.S. President Donald Trump even took the trouble to personally make the announcement in the White House with TSMC's chairman, C.C. Wei. This isn't just about factories. It's about geopolitics, national security, and America's race to secure its tech future. However, it also affects Taiwan's destiny. But what does this mean for the semiconductor industry, for Taiwan's strategic position, and the biggest question of all, how long can TSMC stay on top? Joining us today to break this down is a perfect guest, Jeremy Zhicheng Zhang Zhicheng. He is the CEO of Taiwan's Research Institute for Democracy, Society, and Emerging Technology, or DSET for sure. So welcome to the studio, Jeremy.
Hi, Guangying. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so thank you for making time in your busy schedule to talk with us. Your think tank, DSET, it has a really long name. I can't even say it in one breath. It's called Research Institute for Democracy, Society, and Emerging Technology, and we call it DSET for short. Can you tell us something about this think tank? Why was it established, and when did you join the organization?
Yeah, I know it's quite a long name, but I would just ask everybody just to remember we are DSET.
Okay, DSET.
Yeah, DSET. So why DSET?
Yeah.
So because I think originally all the founders of a DSET has a huge consensus shared among them that the democracy should be the most prioritized value.
Right. Can we go back? Who are the founders of DSET?
Well, so they are the top policy makers. They are the top decision makers, serve for the government during past couple of years and who were in charge of the policy making for the tech policy and geopolitics and diplomacy as well.
Mm-hmm, right.
Yeah.
So are they the organizations such as National Science Council or?
Yeah. So we were being created by the National Science and Technology Council in the end of 2023. Yeah, so we're just 1.5-year-old.
Really young. Yeah.
Think tank, yeah.
So what is the role of DSET? What are your research topics?
So we are a think tank that only focuses on the tech policy issue that related to techno geopolitics. So the tech policy and geopolitics. So it's not really hard to imagine, especially if you spend your time living here in Taiwan for the past couple of years, and you're easy to understand that Taiwan has just suddenly been put into the center of the spotlight of the geopolitics. Yeah, everybody just was starting to discuss about the importance of TSMC, and everybody, on the other hand, talk very frankly about whether there's a possibility for the coming of Taiwan contingency and whether that's going to bring a huge disruption of the global supply chain. And what's the future for the technology if we don't have the semiconductors? So those are the issues that previously, even untalked by the international stage. But, recently, everybody is just discussing about Taiwan. Everybody was discussing about the semiconductor and how critical it is for the future of a human civilization.
Right. Yeah, it's as if everybody became a semiconductor expert overnight and anyone can say something about it. But I think you did point out a very important point that Taiwan is under the spotlight at the intersection of techno, geoeconomy, or geopolitics, which brings me to my next question is, why are you working for DSET? Tell us about yourself.
I left Taiwan when I graduated from my college, so my 22 years old. That was the year of 2009. So I was absent from this island nation for in total 15 years.
Right. So 2009, that was just after the financial crisis.
Yeah. And so I chose Japan to pursue for my PhD degree in law. So I was a lawyer by training. And after receiving my PhD, I taught law in Japan.
Where was that in Japan?
In Kyoto University.
Kyoto is my favorite city in Japan. You're a lucky guy.
Yeah, my favorite as well.
Okay, so how did you go from a lawyer teaching in Kyoto to where you are now?
I was lucky to be selected as a postdoctoral fellow there in Harvard in the year of 2017 to 18. So that was I think the most critical year. Even from now, you see,
because
during the Trump 1.5.
Okay, that's when Trump first took office.
Yeah, and that was the year that the U.S. and China firstly, escalated the trade war, but then upgraded to the technology hegemonic competition.
Right.
Yeah, it's within 1 year.
Right. So you spent 1 year in Harvard and you came back to Japan?
And I was lucky enough to witness those events happen. And I realized that the global order has totally been changed. So we're going to face a more uncertainty future. And, lots of new policies should have been done by different kind of a way. So people is going to more and more focusing on the technology, on competition, on the emerging technology, whatever. So I chose getting back to Japan and then shifted my career from academic to think tank circle. So I started work for firstly a Japanese governmental related research think tank, and then another research think tank under Japanese central government.
See, so you were helping the Japanese government formulate tech policies.
That related to geopolitics. So we use a term economic security.
Oh, I see. Okay. And that's a term that's also getting popular in Taiwan as well. People started talking about it. So you joined DSET last year, right? Why did you choose to come back to Taiwan?
So there are a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, because everybody realized that how important Taiwan is. And when I was working for the Japan's top-tier policy-making circle, TSMC or Taiwan Semiconductor has been more and more frequently
on the spotlight. That was during COVID.
That was during COVID, yeah, because the shortage of semiconductor chips, and then Japan decided to subsidize the TSMC to introduce them come to Japan for investment.
Right.
But on the other hand, as a diaspora Taiwanese, I already left Taiwan for over 13 years, and then when people more and more discussing about Taiwan contingency, I was thinking maybe it's time to go back home and do something for the country that I was born and grew up.
Right. Home calls, and also when the world started talking about Taiwan, I guess, the reason I started this podcast 2 years ago, it was because actually the same reason as why you came back to Taiwan, because I feel like everybody is talking about Taiwan, the risks, the contingency, and TSMC, but I feel that there's no one really talking about Taiwan in English and from a Taiwan perspective. So I really think that's lacking. So we're very happy to have you here helping this think tank. Yeah, so thank you, Jeremy. And next to our topic today is TSMC's expansion and what's the bigger picture. And to start talking about this, I have to bring your attention to the research paper you published earlier this year, actually on the day of the inauguration of President Trump. And the paper is titled Walking a Tightrope, Navigating Taiwan-U.S. Semiconductor Security Under Trump 2.0. Right. So first of all, for our listeners who are not so familiar with semiconductors, could you tell us why semiconductor chips are so crucial for the U.S.?
Well, semiconductors everywhere since human civilization is going to be only more and more digitalized.
Okay.
So you cannot lacking of semiconductors because we have to use semiconductors with all of our electronic devices, such as smartphones, your PCs, your laptop, your fridges, your cars, and whatever, right? And so this is really a driven part for the technology.
So anything that involves electronic control.
Yes.
Okay, so washing machines, and my favorite example is Nintendo's
Okay, yeah.
Very important. So semiconductor chips are in everything.
Yes.
Okay. It's always been so important. Why was it okay to have TSMC produce most of its chips in Taiwan before? And why is it not okay now that the US wants TSMC to invest?
Well, I think this is a major challenge for Taiwan's semiconductor business as well, because previously, semiconductor was just a part of the supply chain.
Right.
Even it has comparatively higher added value, but it's even just a part of a supply chain. During the past couple of 3 decades, the globalization has shaped the structure of the supply chain, and Taiwan just played a role as a
just
B2B.
One part of it.
Yeah. So we supply the semiconductor. We manufacture the semiconductor chips, and we're supplying our products for the clients. Most of them are in the US, and some of them are in Japan. And China has become more and more bigger market for us to export our semiconductor chips. But on the other hand, because the innovation or the disruptive innovation, especially driven by AI, make the geopolitics totally changed. So previously, everybody wasn't talking about the importance of semiconductor chips. But now everybody has been seeing the semiconductor chips as the most valuable strategic materials for the future of technology.
It's the new oil, and they want them to be homegrown instead of imported.
Yeah, so everybody started talking about economic security. You cannot lacking of the capacity of manufacturing the most critical part of the technology within the supply chain, because if you are losing the power of manufacturing this part, and you might not getting the ticket for the future of technology. Competition as well.
So what I hear is the semiconductor industry used to be a highly globalized supply chain. So we take the materials from somewhere else, we manufacture the chips in Taiwan, and they're shipped off to other places to be packaged and tested. It's highly globalized, but the pandemic has really broken the supply chain and exposed its vulnerabilities. So now the major powers want a piece of that capability to manufacture those chips on their home turf. I guess that's what's happening now.
Yeah, I think the most critical part is not only about the shortage of the semiconductors during the pandemic. The most critical part is the AI or other emerging technologies is totally reshaped the future of the geopolitics, especially when the US and China is competing each other of, who is the hegemony of the future.
Right.
And the AI or other emerging technology is really powerful. It's really potentially to reshape this, hegemonic.
So you're saying that the powers want the capabilities to be close to them, to the center of the influence.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So let's go back to the policy paper. It's titled Walking a Tightrope. What's the tightrope you're referring to?
So the tightrope is, really the position that Taiwan has.
Is walking.
Yeah, currently.
Okay. So it's Taiwan that's walking on the tightrope.
Yeah, it's because there's many factors, right? Given that we are in the front line, the geopolitical front line, and we are facing the military threat from our rivalry. And on the other hand, we are still manufacturing the most valuable and the most portion of the most advanced semiconductor chips for the world.
Over 90%.
Yeah. And on the other hand, with China bring the threat for our supply chain because they are subsidizing, they're trying to indigenize in their capacity for manufacturing semiconductors. On the other hand, because U.S., the decision makers there in Washington, D.C. has already understand that it's really critical for us, for the U.S., to regain the capacity of manufacturing or developing the most advanced semiconductor chips for the national security reason or for the industrial policy reason, whatever. So we are really in between of these great powers competing each other for the most critical technologies. And we have that. How do we maintain this balance, and how do we leverage our own capacity of semiconductor supply chain? I think the end goal for Taiwan is maintain our national security, maintain our national interest. How do we achieve that goal?
Right.
So we are either we don't agree that we are a small nation anymore, but we're still middle power. China and US is much, much bigger than us.
So we're in between.
Yeah, we have to dance with them, just like we are walking a tightrope.
Yeah. So, but we are going to delve into the question of TSMC's dilemma here. So going back to what I just said in the beginning of the show, TSMC just announced that it'll invest over $100 billion, but so it's going to be a total of $165 billion in the U.S. And TSMC Chairman C.C. Wei said in the press conference that it's about satisfying demand from their U.S. customers. Why would there be so much demand for advanced semiconductor chips from the U.S.? Where's it coming from?
As I mentioned previously, because partially it was because of national security reason. On the other hand, it's really about the anxiety that U.S. is losing, the manufacturing job for the middle class people. This is a really huge, political issue now. They're shared among the American politics. And so either the Democrats or the Republicans, even people who are supporting Trump, that's really support Trump to bring more and more manufacturing job back to the U.S. soil, especially the high-end, high added value manufacturing job activities back to the U.S. And so I think double their reasons, the U.S. is really demanding that TSMC has more and more their own capacity there, not only the manufacturing activities, but also the R&D activities there in the U.S. soil. So TSMC, until currently, the business model is really very straight. We are supplying the best service for the clients, whatever the clients is from Japan, China, or the US. Of course, most of the clients are the US fabless or tech giants.
Like NVIDIA, AMD, and
Yes.
Apple, Tesla.
Yeah, but when the US has these huge ambitious industrial policies, since Biden administration, because Biden administration announced the Chips and Science Act. But during Trump era, again, it's maybe not the Chips Science Act again. It's maybe not directly subsidized TSMC again. But Trump is really introducing another package with maybe it's a Stargate or whatever any else of the industrial policy, trying to accelerating the reindustrialization there in the U.S. So TSMC doesn't have many choice for saying no, given everybody understand, and even much of the shareholders understand that TSMC stay in Taiwan can achieve the best efficiency for this company's business model. But on the other hand, this is not really about the market only. It's not really about the efficiency only. It's more and more it's political issues.
I see.
Yeah, intervene into this business.
I see. Right. So, I guess it's becoming increasingly clear that business decisions are not purely about economy anymore. It's also political and geopolitical. So, Well, thank you for the insight. We're going to take a short break. And after the break, we're going to ask Jeremy if TSMC can stay competitive in the long run. Welcome back to the Taiwanology podcast. This is your host, Liu Guangying. In our studio today is Jeremy Zhang Zhicheng. He is the CEO of the Research Institute for Democracy, Society, and Emerging Technology in Taiwan, DSET. And so we're talking about the TSMC's investment plans in the U.S. And I think the U.S. has made it very clear that reducing reliance on Taiwan for advanced chips manufacturing is becoming a core policy goal. And also you pointed out in the policy paper, I guess a lot of Taiwanese people or investors of TSMC would have this question on their mind. Now that TSMC is building more fabs for advanced chips in Arizona, or some people say Texas, how would that affect TSMC's competitiveness in the long run?
Well, TSMC's business model is that they have been achieved the best efficiency and best technology developing process for the most advanced semiconductor manufacturing. So currently, only 2 other companies are still competing with TSMC. In the short run, maybe Intel and Samsung is losing this power for keeping chasing TSMC. So if you're looking at the future, maybe TSMC is going to be the only player in the world that's still capable of developing the next generation of semiconductor chips for the next generation of technology.
Okay, so you're saying more than advanced, so beyond that.
Yeah, but the business model is really based on the efficiency, right? Because this is really the market-driven business. You cannot bear the burden if you don't have enough efficiency for reinvesting into the next generation of the R&D process and next generation of the manufacturing activities.
What do you mean by efficiency?
They are making money.
Okay, they're very profitable. So you're saying that their current business model is using not too many workforce to achieve a lot and make a lot of money. That's efficiency.
Yeah, so this industry, tracing back to the past couple of decades, well, originally when semiconductor industry emerging in the world, we have dozens of semiconductor companies who are capable of manufacturing semiconductors. But when time goes, now, only less and less companies still, surviving. And well, in the future, maybe less than 1 or less than 10 are still capable of manufacturing these complex components for driven the future of the technology.
Yes. So I think we all know that TSMC is highly competitive and we shouldn't worry about its future. I think, as you said, TSMC may be the only company that can afford investing in the future of the next generation of semiconductor chips. But then there comes the question for Taiwan. So there are a lot of people who are saying, okay, maybe not a lot, some people say that, well, now that TSMC is going to manufacture advanced chips on US soil, and maybe in the future, probably also in Japan, that would make it less likely for US and other allies to intervene if the Taiwan contingency really happens, if something should happen. It means that by expanding overseas, that Taiwan is becoming less safe. What do you say to that kind of worry?
Well, I think this issue has been very frequently discussed for the past couple of years, right? So the traditional term we've been used is silicon shield. And so whether Taiwan has a silicon shield, whether Taiwan should embrace the concept of a silicon shield, and whether the silicon shield will really effectively protect Taiwan by forcing everybody to put all of their stakes here in this island nation in order to deter China's invasion. I'm kind of doubtful about this concept. First of all, well, if you are having this kind of a narrative, it means that you have a pros and cons. You have a pros because everybody believes that TSMC and Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem is very critical. On the other hand, the solution for either from allied countries or from adversary countries, I think the solution is very simple. They do whatever they want to bring the capacity back to their soils. So this kind of becoming a zero-sum issue between Taiwan and their counterparts. So from my perspective, I think we should kind of introduce another narratives for, communicate with especially our allies there in the US by, first of all, persuade them that maintain the efficiency of TSMC here in Taiwan is for the national interest of the US, because you still cannot letting off an ecosystem that still are capable of manufacturing, developing the next generation of the chips before you really regain the capacity of Taiwan's role. But on the other hand, so deepening the interdependence is ultimately for the national interest of Taiwan as well. Because if we are expanding our capacity there in the US, and the TSMC is the only leading power for the semiconductor chips for every technology companies there in the US, that means the US and Taiwan is going to accelerating the collaboration in terms of the most advanced technology developing. And so the US is cannot lacking of Taiwan, and Taiwan cannot lacking of the US. The interdependency, finally, I think that serve Taiwan's national interest, not only national security, but also the economy.
Right, I see. So you're saying that TSMC expansion in the U.S. can be viewed as we're deepening the interdependence, the symbiosis, maybe relations between Taiwan and the U.S. So yeah, I think that's a pretty bright picture you have painted, and that's what we're hoping to see. Because we know that to set up manufacturing capacities for advanced chip making is very time consuming and might not go as smoothly as a lot of people have hoped, I guess. Right. So I have two last questions. For Taiwan, I think there are a lot of people who are seeing that U.S.-China tech rivalry is intensifying. And what should other industries in Taiwan go forward? We know that TSMC is the most competitive company that everybody wants a piece of. But does it mean that other industries have no future?
Taiwan has been developing its own industry or economy based on manufacturing the intermediary goods for the clients. So this is really Taiwan are good at.
Okay.
We cannot, bring another innovative idea to totally reshape the working culture or the business model here that has been, developed for decades. So I can answer that. So every emerging technologies is important, from biotechnology, quantum computing. It's all important. But what Taiwan's role is, again, I think mostly still manufacturing, comparatively higher added value components.
Key components.
Yes, especially key components. So I'm kind of confident because, Taiwanese companies, these manufacturers, they are really good at doing, supply chain integration or manufacturing a, better, higher added value parts, but in the very efficient way. So whenever the quantum computing era is coming, I think Taiwan's role for manufacturing the quantum computing related hardware is still irreplaceable. Biotechnology, you need more and more devices for this industry as well. Taiwan's role is irreplaceable. Our supply chain is very flexible for manufacturing the client's demands and to fit client's demands. So this is really about the culture, and this is really about how Taiwan has been developed its own industry and economy as well. So I'm still confident that we are going to find the solution based on the wisdom of the people of this island nation.
Right.
Because we've overcome most of the challenges for the past of decades. So yeah, we'll keep going.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I also have a lot of confidence in Taiwan's industry because their people are very entrepreneurial here and they work very, very hard. And last question is, this might be an oddball question. What's one thing about Taiwan semiconductor future that you think isn't being talked about enough? What are people missing when they think about semiconductor industry?
Well, I think there is no end game scenario. So we are just keeping running, just like a walking a tightrope. Maybe it's better to use the term running because we cannot stop. We cannot stop. And the situation is going to changing more and more frequently. The US is keeping pursuing regain the capacity of manufacturing the most advanced semiconductors. China is pursuing
trying to catch up.
Yeah, catch up our capacity, our capability. And so we are still nothing we can choose. We just keep running. And we need more and more wisdom, right? I think this silicon-based technology, if it doesn't change in the near future or maybe in the long run, but we still have the ticket for be put into the spotlight for the future of a global economy or the technologies.
Right. So Jeremy, are you saying we should be running the tightrope? That's what you're saying?
We have been running for decades, and we still keep it running.
Okay, not just walking, but running.
Yeah.
Right. I think Jensen Huang said something similar in a speech last year or something. Yeah, so, well, thank you, Jeremy, for ending on a positive note. And I'm very happy to have you today in the studio and
Same here,
appreciate your hard work. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Guangyin. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review or drop us an email. For deeper insights into TSMC and the semiconductor supply chain, please visit the Commonwealth English website. The next episode will be available April 22nd. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts and stay tuned for more conversations. Talk to you soon.